Thank you for joining us as you text messages the resurrection, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rick Text, the parasite of the show. We're absolutely elated to have you joining us once again. Now we've been delving into some pretty serious topics lately, and we probably will for the foreseeable future. Yeah, when we first started text messages back in March of last year, it was basically a clown show. That wasn't really the entire intention, but that's sort of what it spun off into. And now that we've actually got the sound about where we need it to be, and could it be better? Yeah, probably could. But this will be about as good as we're gonna have it, at least now for now. If we see possible variables for improvement, then we certainly will tackle that, ladies and gentlemen. We are absolutely dedicated towards putting on the best show we can. Oh yeah, it takes time though. I mean, it's like a freight train. We're loading the coal into the boiler right now. And once we get the freight train moving, once it starts moving, it's going to be moving pretty fast and it's going to be carrying a lot of momentum. And it could potentially derail, no doubt about that. Or it could be the backbone of commerce in as far as making Elk River and Minnesota and the United States great again. So we will just continue to put our best foot forward and hope for the best. Now, we've had basically the snow hasn't really stopped for probably about a week now, so we were fortunate to get the show in for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. And February 11th is actually a very special day because it was that day that I was talking to the cameraman of the public access channel show, the top rated show that could have probably beat out national television shows. And he basically gave me the blessing to go ahead with this talk show. I mean, he might have said it in jocular fashion, but I mean, just the fact that he did provide that blessing was basically all we needed to, hit the pedal to the metal. And I also found out that one of the greatest talk shows in the history of our country was also born on February 11th. February 11th certainly holds special meaning. February 11th is the official, I call it the official inauguration of text messages resurrection because that's when we actually started, accumulating the paint to, paint this wall. When we started to get the pulpit, we started to order up the camera. I got this old microphone from Raccoon Todd. Raccoon Todd, I think he's on Twitch, Twitch, or it's Twitch. It's the live streaming one that Amazon owns or whatever. So yeah, he's on there. I don't think he's on YouTube though, but he basically has a bunch of cameras set up and raccoons hang out with him and he feeds them and they sit on his lap and roll around and it's everyone's laughing and smiling and it's all fun and games. People are slapping each other on the back and whatnot. So he runs a pretty good show. He sold me a nice microphone, but ultimately we decided to go ahead and, we donated it to another individual who will hopefully start a talk show in the very near future. Maybe not, but the problem is I know unequivocally in my heart that if he does start a talk show, it will, obviously, yeah, it'll far eclipse text messages, the resurrection, but just having the time, the incentive, the motivation, the dedication, and just the encouragement, this is usually what existing is all about, trying to build up others. It may not be readily available or blatantly obvious to a lot of people, but the most successful people are usually those who have been around people that have built them up and in turn build up others. A lot of times you've probably worked in an environment where you worked with very destructive people. They didn't want to teach you anything. They wanted to hold their cards close to their chest, so they say, and they called it job security. But in all reality, it's just basically job parasitism, parasitic behavior. And if you want to actually, be the positive change you want to see in the world, you definitely have to teach others and be willing to learn from others too. Sometimes, yeah, you have to adapt. You have to be a chameleon and learn to adapt to their ways and methods and everything too. But based on the rewards you attain from it, it's a very small price to pay. And so we really sincerely hope that that there are other talk shows that will eventually manifest themselves, especially ones that'll be far superior to this one. I mostly just do this one to plug for future shows. Well, that was the whole idea of the original text messages, to plug for future shows. And then when it became obvious that those shows were either on the back burner or just weren't going to happen at all, yeah, I admit I got a little dejected. And another thing too, the sponsorship obligations back then were very stringent, so it didn't really leave a whole lot of time or even a lot of energy to film, you know, text messages, the resurrection, or the original text messages. But now that we got a pretty good system set up here, a couple 10-20 minute shows. Today we haven't had a lot of time, so we're probably going to shoot for a 20-minute show just because, you know, we got plenty of time. I mean, it's respectful for you, the ladies and gentlemen at home. You know, rather than just sitting around watching TV, we figured, all right, well, let's just extend the show a little bit. We got the time, and why not? And yeah, there will probably be incidents in the future where we'll have to cancel a show or cut it short or whatever the case may be. So everything works sort of like a sine wave. There's the DC median, and we just try to raise the DC median as much as possible. Now, what we wanted to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about white blood cells, red blood cells, plasma. Now we're going to talk about platelets. As you can see from this illustration, now they provide some numbers up here. White blood cells 4%, plasma 55, whatever, and then the other percentages. So now I know we've said white blood cells is 1% before. I mean, these are just loose estimates. You know, they're within the ballpark, but I mean, in all honesty, pure 100% accuracy isn't very important as far as you gauging your own health and being able to make yourself great again. I mean, we just try to find ballpark estimates and then run with that. And we're not trying to intentionally mislead people or just be too lazy to find good sources and to be dogged in our search for the answers. You know, we just try to provide as much information as we can given our resources. I mean, we do work with a skeleton crew, so that's no excuse. I mean, we're still going to be pedal to the metal, running the high groove, shoveling the coal into the burner. So platelets, also known as thrombocytes, they're essentially the first responders to damage in vessels and begin to repair through clotting. So they begin to coagulate. See, here's how the platelets work. They start out looking a lot like the red blood cells. They look like a plate, basically. And then once they identify scarring or abrasions or holes or cuts in the vessels or arteries or capillaries, veins, whatever, then they go tackle them. And then with their little tentacles, their tentacles can get really, really small to hear the hole or the opening or the illness, abrasion. So, and then they begin to coagulate with the other platelets. They all team up on it and try to correct the issue as quickly as possible. Oh yeah, if there's a big gaping wound, they're gonna need some help. You know, either you're gonna have to depressurize it or tie a big towel around it or something like that. So that's essentially what platelets do. Now, see, initially they're shaped like plates, and then they grow the tentacles. Now they are derived from bone marrow. Same with the red blood cells. So that's why bones are so healthy. See, back in the good old days, companies used to actually grind up the bones and then they'd put it in certain types of food. And nowadays, you can still buy bone broth in the store, but you're better off just making it. It's actually pretty simple. You just get a couple bones, apple cider vinegar, and then maybe throw in some other junk in a crock pot and cook it up for 48 hours, and you got some delicious bone broth and healthy bone broth. And by the end of the 48 hours, you should be able to pulverize the bones and then just kind of mix them up into the apple cider vinegar. And you can make some delicious soups with that. And it's very healthy stuff, very tasty. Just a 360 win. So the platelets contain no nucleus. They're about 2 to 3 micrometers in diameter. So there's 4 zones to the platelets here. There's the peripheral, which is rich in glycoproteins for adhesion, activation, and aggregation. Then there's the sol gel, which is rich in microtubules and microfilaments, allowing the discoid shape. So they're the ones that sort of come out from inside their shell, and then they're essentially the tentacles. Then there's the organelle, which is the granules alpha and delta. They contain the ADP, calcium, serotonin. See, the ADP adenophosphate, that's the flow of energy in living cells. So that's essentially their energy source, or where they're their energy receptors, whatever you want to call them. And then they got the membranes. So the production is regulated in the liver and the kidneys. See, the bone marrow creates them, and it's regulated in the liver and kidneys by a hormone called the thrombopoietin. So on any given day, there's about 10 to the 11 platelets produced, which is 100 billion. And they generally have an 8 to 9 day lifespan. So altogether in your body, there's probably about 1 trillion, 8 to 900 billion platelets, and probably about that many red blood cells too. So I mean, there's a lot of them floating around in there. And of course, these are just ballpark estimates. I mean, it's, yeah, if you measured every single platelet inside somebody's body, it may not be entirely accurate. And if you do want to measure blood count, you can get a hemocytometer and then just an optical microscope. And with that, you can find out a way to measure your blood count yourself, which we probably will do sometime in the very near future. See, we are likely going to take this show to the next level. And for us, the next level will probably be the, not quite the molecular level, but the microscopic level. See, you've heard of the terms milli, micro, nano, pico, and femto. So milli is 10 to the minus 3. Micro is 10 to the minus 6. Nano, 10 to the minus 9. Pico, 10 to the minus 12. And femto, 10 to the minus 15. And then they get to really small numbers, which we're not prepared to give out the terminologies just yet. So with an optical microscope, we can go to the microscopic level. And then with the atomic force or scanning electron, then we can go to nano and pico level. And we may get to that point someday. But for now, we'll just, the next level for us will be the microscopic level. So the platelets, they get phagocytosed in the liver and the spleen, which essentially means they get Pac-Man up and then flushed out of the body. So now there's three. So when the blood vessels, arteries, veins, capillaries, whatever, when they first become abrased and cut and they become damaged, there's 3 steps that the platelets adhere to. First, they the adhesion step. When the endothelial, which is the tissue which layers the blood vessel, when the endothelial layer is disrupted, collagen anchors platelets to the endothelium, endothelium. So basically, when the vein vessel gets cut, the platelets all rush to the scene, and then they begin to give off collagen, so they begin to coagulate with each other. It'd be like if there's a mosh pit, for example, and then everybody started dumping honey in the mosh pit, so then everyone started sticking to each other. Well, that's probably about what it would be like. Quite similar to this, actually. It's probably just a macrocosmic level of macrocosmic illustration of that. So then they have the activation. The platelets are initially inhibited by nitrous oxide that are around the inside of the vessels, and then the APase and the prostacillin are triggered when the collagen binds with the platelet receptors. So they essentially, it's a nervous system activation. So then the signals increase in the thrombin, which is the platelet actuator, and then they begin to produce all the necessary signals to send out to the other platelets to get on board and start eradicating the cut or the abrasion. So the membrane surface essentially becomes negative charged, which causes the coagulation using calcium ions. So if you're low in calcium, a lot of people, they have a blood clotting disorder. It usually means maybe their body doesn't produce calcium, maybe it's not regulated properly, or they don't need calcium. So that's why your body needs the calcium. See, calcium is C2+, or so. It's like a positively charged ion or whatever. So when the membrane surface becomes negatively charged, it attracts those calcium ions, and then they begin to coagulate with each other. See, the calcium ion would be like the honey, and the moshers would be like the negatively charged surface. So then the aggregate, they turn on and allows binding to the fibronogen, which is, the part of the fiber on the outside of the platelet. So they generally seek out sites. They also have an alternative activity. They seek out sites of inflammation and release platelet-derived growth factor, PDGF. So when you get injured, or your arm gets hurt or lopped off or something, and try to repair it, what usually happens is the inflammation, the platelets, the red blood cells, white blood cells, everything rushes to the scene. And then the platelets will create the inflammation, so the growth factor, they'll try to create new cells to grow where the cut is. A lot of people artificially use growth hormone to grow new muscles. So if you cut the muscles, then the platelets will go to that site and try to rebuild them to where they are, or to hopefully to a slightly greater level to adapt to the progressive loads that you're applying to it. And lastly, some of the things that suppress platelets are aspirin and a bunch of other drugs too. we'll just mostly stick with aspirin because people are pretty familiar with that. I mean, there's clopidogrel, silostazol, ticlopridine, praise or grel. They're very difficult words to pronounce. Probably should really get a pronunciator for this show, ladies and gentlemen. It's definitely one thing that we could likely improve on, and it really won't be that arduous of a task to find that too. So that being said, that's pretty much platelets in a nutshell. They if the vessels, capillaries, arteries, or veins or whatever get cut, they're the first responders. You know, the red blood cells, yeah, they help out too, and the plasma is the transportation mechanism. And then the white blood cells are there to fight off any infections that may arise due to the cut that try to enter into the blood vessel. So yeah, all these four parts of your blood, red blood cells, white blood cells, plasma, platelets, they all work in conjunction. They all have their own individual responsibilities, and they all serve to make you great again. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us, and hopefully this is a very informative broadcast, and hopefully you'll be able to make yourselves great again with this new found knowledge and entertainment. Thank you very much.